What's up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today's install is going to be one that you guys are going to be needing if you're thinking about boosting your engine or building your engine. It's not something that you have to have, but it's definitely something that protects the longevity of your engine. If you guys have a VQ platform, meaning the 350 or the 370, the G35, G37, they are notorious for having oil consumption issues. So what we're installing today is the oil catch can from Mishimoto. The thing that you guys have to know about the G35 and the 350 specifically, Mishimoto made a catch can specifically for our car. You can get the universal, in which they have a bunch of them if you need to do specific hose diversions and things like that, but they actually made one. We were lucky enough that they made one with a bracket specifically for the 350Z and G35. So what we're going to be doing is getting that installed on this lovely thing here. You guys probably haven't even seen the engine bay yet. There's a lot of things that have changed. But what we're going to do is this bracket here is going to come off, and then the new bracket is going to be set up here holding the catch can, and I will show you guys how to do the whole install in just a few seconds. In the video, basically what I'm going to be explaining to you guys is how to install and do all the lines for the Mishimoto catch can. I actually have it halfway out now, but I'm going to go back and show you guys how to do it. The one thing I want you guys to understand when you're doing this is, and this is the reason I actually have it out early, is what you're diverting is this line here, which is on the left side. If you're facing the engine, it's on the left side of the engine, on top of the cylinder, on top of the cover, the valve cover. And what this line usually connects to is back into the upper intake, and what that ends up doing is a lot of oil vapor that's being burned off here just filters right back into the engine, and over a long time you start ending up with a dirty intake. You start ending up with really consistent blow-by issues and oil consumption issues. The one thing I'm going to explain here, now that it's all cleaned up, is when you have aftermarket intakes, meaning the upper intake plenum, sometimes these lines are diverted differently. So as you guys can see, I have the Kinetics intake manifold, and that line actually connects from here immediately up to the left, right here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pan over right now with what Felicia's stock engine cover looks like, and what you guys are going to see is, you can see that the line that is connecting the upper intake to the left crankcase cover, the left valve cover, is actually routed to the front. All right, so for this install, the parts that you need are actually going to be very simple. You don't have to have any power tools. They help if you want to, but you're going to need a 10 mil socket to remove the 6 bolts here. You're going to need a flathead screwdriver or a 7 mil. That's just for the clamps when you're removing and tightening up the hoses. The 7 mil socket goes around the screw hole, or you can just use a flathead screwdriver to bring it down. You'll also need Allen keys to connect the catch can to the bracket, and you might need a few extensions if you're using sockets to get into where the holes are, or sorry, where the clamps are, to get them tightened up, because some of them are a little bit deep once the hose wraps around. So the first thing you're going to need to do is remove these 3 10mm bolts that are holding the bracket on. They're pretty easy and straightforward. You just get on there. Mine are a little freshly painted, so the issue with that is just I'm scratching up the black paint job that matches the rest of the car. But you just break these off and bring them out. I tell people all the time, and I'm going to continue to tell people, wait to fully disconnect any single bolt. That way you're ready to catch stuff. So I live along the mindset of break them all first, and then from there get them off. So now that they're all broken, now I can work my way around and actually get them all the way off. Because last thing you want to do with these 10mm bolts is drop them down and never see them again, because you won't see them again if you don't. Alright, so I've gotten the other 2 out. This is the last one, but all of your 10mm bolts are going to be about that long, so just be aware of how much you're pulling out. Some people think it's a really short one, or the worst thing you can do is think it's longer than it is and then end up dropping it. So I'm going to sit that right there. When you are doing this whole bracket deal, you'll see that there are 3 grommets that basically are on both sides of the bracket. Keep these. Mishimoto does not send you new grommets when they send this bracket out. So you're going to need to reinstall these on the new bracket that you're going to be installing. Now that the bracket is completely disconnected, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to unhook your power steering reservoir, which is here. Everybody already knows that by now. If you're doing this job, you should have every clue on that. You're going to need to unhook your power steering reservoir, which is basically just clipped onto this bracket, off, and then when you bring the other one on, this bracket piece right here is exactly the same as the OEM one, so you're just going to snap it back in. So when you remove this bracket, just make sure that you don't break this little clip that's on right here. What I'm going to use is just a piece of metal to kind of pry it open, but this clip here is hooked into the bracket, which stops it from going anywhere. But a little bit of pressure there and you'll just lift it off, and from there you can pretty much just, or you should be able to just slide the bracket out. There we go. So this is the bracket that holds the power steering reservoir basically in place, and these are the grommets I was talking about before. But just to give you a quick side by side, as I said, they're pretty much identical except for this big added piece that's right there. But all you're going to do now is you're going to transfer these grommets here. Just be careful not to break them. You're going to transfer these grommets one by one onto your new bracket, and make sure that your washers or like your metal rings are on the outside, not the inside. So there's a little metal ring that's there. You want that pressed up against the outside, and that's so that the actual rubber component is pressed up against your whatever color paint job you have on the engine bay. So you don't want to have metal scratching up what that looks like. But the transfer is pretty easy. You can do it by hand. And now all I'm going to do is take this bracket and reinstall it back into the car. Alright, now that we have these grommets connected and reinstalled, all we're going to do is just do the same process in reverse. We're going to take our 10mm bolt and line these holes up first. Once you have them lined up, you just run those screws straight through. And I always tell people to hand tighten stuff and make sure that you have stuff set up. My assistant's going to hand me a screw. That is great. Make sure that your stuff is hand tightened in and you have everything lined up before you go and shoot yourself in the foot. So that bracket comes all the way out here, and what I have to do now is actually stretch that in a bit. In you go, son. Hold that for a second, I'll take that one. And define the hole. I've gone through and hand tightened all these. All I have to do now is just take that same 10mm socket and tighten all these grommets back all the way in. And if you're getting tired of the quick clips, it's because I feel like it makes more sense to skip the arduous just cranking stuff non-stop. So any skip that you see me do is literally just to skip this exact thing. So now I'm going to skip to the next piece. So Felicia has finally gotten over her fear of being in install videos, and she is going to aid me in doing this project for whatever time that may be. But what she's going to do now that we have the whole bracket installed and we just popped the power steering reservoir back on, which wasn't anything worth showing you guys, just lift it up and drop it on. The next thing to go on is the actual catch can.
Pretty catch can. So just use an Allen key to take these 3 bolts out, and then you'll use it to attach right here. And I was telling Will, he already knows this, but I said that the reason these are slotted is so that once you get it installed, you can twist it so that the tubing connects snugly into the catch can. So I'm just gonna use the Allen key to take this off. All right, so now that I have the screws out, I'm just going to squeeze that in there. So you want the holes facing this way because that is where the tubing is coming in and going out. You do have to push it a little bit to line it up, but hopefully this goes in nicely. Just gonna put these screws on first. Not going to tighten them yet because we're going to do the tubing and then tighten it once we figure out where the tubing lines up so that we can move the catch can around so that it fits snugly. There we go. All right, now tubing.
Now that Felicia's knocked that piece out, all we have to do now, aside from running the tubing, is connect these two little inserts that are going to run and connect directly to the tubes. The thing you guys got to know about these, which is awesome, is you actually don't have to use any type of Teflon tape to make it a seal. It actually comes with a complete rubber ring on it, and Mishimoto is really adamant about making sure people know, do not use Teflon tape with this. So obviously this is the easy part. You just run these lines in and tighten them pretty tightly. There is a socket fitting here, so once it's on and everything's set, then when you come back around to tighten them obviously, but you do not need any Teflon tape. And like Felicia said, we left it open, we left it pretty loose so that we can adjust this to the way that we need it to run. So we have some aftermarket tubing that came straight from Z1, which actually doesn't have hose clamps on everything, but this line right here, which is the one we were talking about, you're just going to remove this line here. And if you have a OEM upper intake plenum, your line is going to be running from here around like we showed on Felicia's car, but with mine obviously it's right here. So all I have to do is pretty much just wiggle this boy off here. There we go. And then obviously come off of here as well. Just be careful and make sure you clean all this stuff off, but this is going to be being replaced by these two lines here. And now let's just rinse and repeat it. So this line here goes on, but before you do that, you're going to want to put those clamps on, which we have sitting on this side here. We have a small one which goes on the small fitting side, and then we have a bigger one which is going to go obviously on the one that has a slightly bigger hole. But from there, you just insert that bad boy right onto the PCV. Same thing on this side here. Just press them all the way down, and then from there you're just going to tighten these on. But this is the easiest part. All you're doing is just taking a flathead screwdriver or anything like that and just running these lines and then clamping them down. We're going to do the same thing with the secondary line, which is, thank you. Now this is going to be weird. I'm not really sure if this is going to line up correctly, but we will make it work. Because as I said, this is meant for an OEM fitting, which would be running from here directly to the front. But since mine is an aftermarket one, it's actually pretty cool, but I think it lines up almost perfectly. If we have to rotate it a bit, we will. But from there, all the way down and on here, look at that. Almost dead on. We might have to rotate it a little bit, but I think that's pretty good. That down, and then from there all you're going to do is take your flathead screwdriver or your socket and then tighten these up. But from what I can see, we're actually good. All right, again, sparing you guys all the time of watching us tighten bolts. The only thing left to do now that everything is lined up and secure, or kind of secure, is go around and do your final tightening of all of the little Allens, as well as these hose clamps. The hose clamps are probably the most important part. I'm not saying probably, they are the most important part, because if you don't do a good job with that, then you're pretty much still gonna have the same issue, except for your engine bay is gonna be a lot more messy. But a 7mm socket or a flathead screwdriver will both work the same thing, but all you do is just run around and tighten these bad boys right down onto each hose, which, again, I'll do a time lapse of this starting now. Just like that, the install is all done. As you can see, It's in, mounted, all secure. All in all, it only took about 20-25 minutes of actual work. We obviously had to do a little bit of like removing of the engine cover, which isn't that tough, but the lines all fit perfectly. If you have the OEM upper intake, all you're gonna have to do, I figured out, is just reverse the long line that they gave you. If you have a Kinetics intake manifold, you just flip it to the left, and if you have an OEM one, you would just flip it to the right and let it run its course. But other than that, it was a very straightforward install, no issues to report. We didn't have anything that didn't fit. The brackets all lined up perfectly. If you guys enjoyed this video and all the dumb stuff that me and Felicia get into, who's behind the camera probably giving me the finger as we speak.
No.
Yeah, she always does.
No, I don't.
Nobody believes her, right? That's what I thought. If you guys have any questions as it relates to this type of stuff, please shoot them in the comments. We've been answering pretty much everybody that we...
Down below.
Yep. Yeah, that, like, a hand in front of the camera doesn't actually point to anything. But if you guys have any questions about the install or how it's working, we'll give an update in a few months or so about how it feels, or if there's any like actual residual stuff that we're finding.
Well, so we'll pull it out in like, what, a month?
Yeah,
Check to see what we get.
Yep. But if you guys are enjoying the stuff, smash that like button, comment, like, subscribe. If you guys want anything specific that we should cover next as it relates to Z's or G's or Subarus, because we do have a Subaru and we have an old dusty Eclipse that we should drive.
Don't hate.
Throw those comments or questions in as well. But you can also follow us at carcouple_ZG, which, let me see if my hand is correct. I'll put that here on this side. Other than that, my name's Will. Obviously, Felicia's behind the camera, and we'll see you guys in the next one.